Hey, welcome back. Today we are going to talk about the reason I even went into caregiving in the first place and the reason I've stayed so long to hopefully give you inspiration or ideas or just get you thinking about caregiving as a potential profession that you might be interested in, or just renew your interest in being a caregiver already. So, in just a few moments, we will get to that. But first, as usual, we want to talk about our 4 cornerstones of caregiving. And if you ever see me look off to the side, I'm looking at my notes just to make sure I'm staying on track. So I'm still here, but I'm going to keep looking off to the side a little bit. So, our number 1 cornerstone of caregiving: put your own mask on first. Take care of your own needs. The second is safety is the cake, fun is the icing. Never compromise safety, never rush to get fun things done. Safety can put you in jail, a lack of fun cannot. So focus on what is most important when it's necessary. Number 3, never ever pretend to have more experience than you actually have. That will get you in so much trouble. If a family asks you a question that you do not have the training to answer, send them to someone who knows. And number 4, remember why you're here. Remember what makes your job important. Remember why it's meaningful, and you'll have a good day. So, let's get on to our story. So, I've been a caregiver for almost a dozen years now, and I've worked with kids with special needs, infants, typically developing children, young adults with special needs. I've worked in group care with camps and schools and daycare even for a while. And so all of those things considered, I never thought I would be able to look back and say something like that. Like I didn't think that caregiving was for me. But when I was 13, my father got really, really sick. He had stage 4 cancer. I was in 7th grade at the time. And he got progressively worse and worse and worse. And something just clicked in me. And I felt like the only control I could have over the situation, the only thing I could change was the everyday things. I could be helpful, and I could do the dishes, and I could supervise, and I could, at the time, like administer some of his medicines, make sure that he was drinking water. And those things became critical to me. They helped me cope with what was going on. And so after almost a year of that, it just became part of who I was. And so every situation thereafter where I felt like maybe I wasn't contributing meaningfully, or I wasn't in control of the situation, I could find ways to take care of the people around me, and that would help me cope. And so this caregiving became part of me, and you might have that too. A lot of caregivers do, where they had an experience in childhood where they just realized what their caregiving potential really was and how good it made them feel to take care of other people. So I did end up going to college right after high school, and I enjoyed my first semester, and then I hated it after that. I felt like my time was not being spent meaningfully, and I felt like I was taking all the time. It's like college, I had someone else who was paying for it. Thank goodness for parents. I had all my classes. I was taking in information. I was receiving packages. I wasn't doing anything. And even when I was volunteering, I was taking it. The volunteering opportunities that were available to us were not super interesting, like sorting sweet potatoes. So it twisted me up, and I couldn't adjust my view of myself to include this person who doesn't contribute in any kind of meaningful way. And college is important, of course, because you take in all of that information and then you can go out into the world and do really impactful things. But I just couldn't get on with it. So I quit. I did. For the first time. It was not the first time I quit college, but the first time I left, I wanted to be able to do something. I wanted to feel like my life had value to somebody else, and not just because, oh, you're a fun person, but because I'm contributing something to them. So I went on care.com and I got my first full-time caregiving position. I had worked with children before and I had nannied before, but I got my first full-time special needs caregiving job, and immediately I loved it. I knew every moment of the day what I was doing was important, not only to this child, but to this child's parents and to his siblings. And so I, every day, went home exhausted, for sure, but I knew that my time had been spent wisely. And so that was really important to me. And I'm looking at my notes again to make sure I'm not rambling, but I fell in love with caregiving as a profession. And I did end up going back to college after that job, and then left again later on, essentially for the same reason, which is just I didn't feel like I was contributing unless I was caregiving. And so in that role and in every role after that, I fell in love with the little everyday changes. And I'm I'm an emotional person, so I may tear up when I talk about this, but people don't just get up and walk, right? There's a process to it. People don't just start talking fluently. There's a process, and you don't build relationships with people right away. There's a process. And so I just fell in love with that process of every day, these little changes that I would see in my clients and in the parents and families, the trust we were building, the communication, over time, even with nonverbal clients, you get to understand each other, and cracking those codes was just incredible. I had a nonverbal client once crack a joke 2 weeks in, an actual joke, just a couple of words, and he cackled and laughed, and I don't think I've ever felt so rewarded in my life as somebody trusted me enough to use what limited vocabulary he had to make me laugh. And little things like that happen every single day, every single day. And so it just helps me to focus on what's going on around me. And I also really loved experiencing the new equipment and the new therapies, even with typically developing children. There's less equipment with typically developing children, but trying out new baby carriers and strollers and figuring out new car seats and equipment. Also, in special needs, you've got standers and feeding tubes and suction devices and vests, and you got chest PT, and you've got occupational therapy coming in, and feeding therapy, and Riften chairs, and it's so much fun to explore all of the different disciplines, all of the different therapies, and all of the different equipment that's available. It's so fun. And the third, like, really huge thing for me was seeing the relief in the families. Like, when you go to an interview with a family who hasn't had good, consistent care for a while, they're keyed up. They're uncomfortable, they're stressed, they're tired, and you can just see the relief on their faces when they begin to trust you, and you're coming consistently, and you show up and you do what you say you're gonna do, and they can trust that you're going to be there, and they can take a shower, and you can give them the opportunity to go to the store by themselves, and like, they just become a little more human, and that's really rewarding. And I touched on this earlier, but the relationships that I've built in caregiving have lasted. Even if I've lost contact with the family, knowing all of these people so deeply has enriched the way, like, I view my own relationships and my own life. I have more patience to talk to the people that I do know in my regular everyday life outside of work, because I see how it pays off when you focus on someone and when you really give someone the time of day. And so I'm back in school now, I'm finishing up, but I'm still working in caregiving, and I think I can't imagine doing something else. That's one of the things that's on my mind recently, is where do I go from here? And we'll talk about that in another video, but I really encourage you, if you naturally care for people, if you feel like your life lacks a little meaning right now, if your desk job just isn't doing it, try caregiving. Just peek around the corner and see if you might enjoy being someone's one-on-one or caring for a small group of individuals, because it matters. It really does. And it's so much fun. So thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for listening. And let me know, if you are a caregiver or you're interested in caregiving, what about caregiving draws you in? Because I'm curious to know. Everyone's story is different. So have a great evening.